And hello to everyone today. Welcome to OBS Talk Show Presents. I'm Keith Williams, your host. And in lieu of the 2022 midterm general election, there's a topic that a lot of people, well, you got nonprofit organizations or even the media, they don't talk about this often, but there's two terms that I'm going to be talking about today. One of them is called voter apathy, and then the other one is called voter burnout. So today I will be talking about voter apathy and voter fatigue. So we're going to share my screen here. And we're going to, first thing we're going to talk about is voter apathy. Now, there are a lot of news articles that are related to voter apathy. And it's not uncommon, especially in the last maybe 20 years, that there has been a lot of voter apathy. Not so much nationally, like you get a large turnout when you have a national election, like a presidential election or a senatorial contest or congressional contest, those federal offices. You don't see a lot of voter apathy there. In fact, in the 2020 election, about 2 years ago, there has been a record turnout. You had over 80 million people, so you basically had over 160 million people that came out to vote in the presidential election in 2020, even though we was in the midst of the coronavirus pandemic. We saw a record number of voters who turned out, both on the Democratic side and the Republican side. We saw a record-breaking turnout of voters in the middle of a pandemic. But on the local level, where there's candidates who are running for a state, a county, or municipal election, that's where you tend to see a lot of the low voter turnout and a lot of apathy that takes place there. In a moment, I'm going to give you some reasons why we have voter apathy. So there's a couple of articles here from the Los Angeles Times, and we'll probably look at some others as well. So and it's not just happening here in the United States, it's also happening, all over the world. But for the purpose of this conversation, we are going to cover voter apathy in the United States. So what is voter apathy? In political science, voter apathy is a lack of interest among voters in the election of representative democracy. Voter apathy or lack of interest is often cited as a cause of low voter turnout among eligible voters in jurisdictions where voting is optional, and the donkey vote where voting is compulsory. This phenomenon occurs to some extent across all countries or entities where citizens are able to vote. Voter apathy has led to increased concerns regarding representative democracies because election results do not encompass the entire population who are eligible to vote. Voter fatigue describes a possible cause of voter apathy, which are elections that are held too frequently. Okay, so basically, um, in this case, um, here in Birmingham, we just had the neighborhood elections in about a little bit over a week ago, and now in November, um, we will have the 2022 midterm general election in less than 2 weeks. So you have that small gap to where people, had to go to the polls. They went to the polls in June for the primary. Now you had the neighborhood elections here in Birmingham, and then you have the general election in November. So it's 3 times this year that people have to go to the polls. And as I saw and tell that in the first 2 elections, the voter turnout has been extremely low. Here in Alabama, mostly between 20 and 30% of the voting population actually go out to vote. In neighborhood election, it's extremely lower than that. Probably less than 10%. So when you have multiple elections in 1 year, that tend to cause voter fatigue. So in a moment, we're going to talk about exactly what is voter fatigue. So for now, we're going to be talking about voter apathy. In political science, voter fatigue is caused by is a cause of voter apathy, which results from electorates or representative democracies being required to vote too often. Voter fatigue and voter apathy should be distinguished from what arises when the voters are not allowed or unable to vote. Okay, so basically, voter fatigue, you have multiple elections in a given year that's not spread out. So, and you get things like, I'm tired of going to the polls. That's a sign that a person, is experiencing voter fatigue. There's also another term that is confusing to voter apathy. It's called political alienation. Political alienation. Let's click and see what that is. Political alienation refers to an individual citizen's relative enduring sense of estrangement from or rejected of their prevailing political system. In other words, political alienation simply means that there are things in place. It could be laws, it could be policy, it could be influence, it could be money that keep people from being part of the political process. So again, political alienation is some barrier that's in the way that keep people from participating in the political process. An example of that would be laws that suppress voters. And in the last 10 years, we have seen that, especially after Joseph Biden was elected president of the United States in 2020, we saw a lot of instances where states are trying to suppress voters, including especially those of African American descent and people of color. So that's an example of political alienation. It not only suppress voters, but it's also keeping certain individuals from actually participating in the political process. That is not the same thing as voter apathy. Voter apathy is simply, saying, I don't want to go to the polls and vote. The candidates are being presented. I'm not interested in any of the candidates that are being presented. So I'm not going to vote for either one of them. Voter apathy also involves the fact that people believe that their vote does not count. Also cites that people experiencing voter apathy, believe that no matter who you vote into office, they're not going to serve the interests of the people. So that's a whole lot of what voter apathy, has to do. There are also some psychological factors that are involving the influence of voters' behavior and their perception of politics and how they see political parties, the candidates themselves, and the issues in the election. So here in the United States, we basically have two major parties, Democratic and Republican. And while you have the majority of the voters siding with either Democrats or Republicans, you also have, this group that believes that the two-party system does not technically serve the interests of the people. So whenever you have, elections that involve Democratic candidates and Republican candidates, these individuals, either they belong to a third party or they are independent, you probably would not see them at the polls. Okay, the further down the ballot in office is, the fewer the number of votes that will be cast for it. This is called ballot fatigue. And ballot fatigue, this is where you have a whole lot of candidates that are appearing on the ballot. Now, your most important, so for example, let's say that you have a presidential election. Obviously, the president, vice president, if you have a senator that's running or you have congressmen that are running, they're going to appear at the top of the ballot. But as you go down the ballot, the candidates become, you have the state candidates and you have the county candidates and then you have the local, candidates. So as people go down, this list, is usually have like a multiple slate of candidates, on one ballot. And so really people have no idea who these people are, what issues they stand for, how do we know if this person is the right person for the position. All of these things has factored into ballot fatigue as well as voter apathy. In psychology, when we get into an uncomfortable situation, we tend to be anxious. So it's a high level of anxiety that goes on in the voting booth that a lot of people don't know about. Even the founding fathers had an issue, with this. But founding fathers in their Federalist Papers also believed that essential to liberty, that government in general should have a common interest with the people. And government should have a bond between the people and the representatives that they are, that they elected. This is what the founding fathers believe, but we certainly know that that's not the case. A lot of the part of voter apathy is that you have certain individuals and groups, that control the whole political scene. There's a lot of political organizations that specialize in doing that. So they are influenced by power, they are influenced by money. And most likely the candidate that are involved in these organizations, people tend to shy away from it because they feel that they're for the corporate interest, they're for the special interest, they're bought and paid for, and that their loyalty would not be, lied to the people, but their loyalty would lie to the organizations that gave them money and helped them get elected. And so that makes people angry. And that's one of the reasons why you don't see a lot of people, in the polls. In the 19th century, there was a substantially large amount of voter turnout with numerous years over 80%. This was due to several factors. One, political machines gave voters an incredible incentive to vote with favors of work, wealth, and political power, which are especially attracted to poor immigrants. However, political machines lost much of their power with the increased ability to vote and with more exposure on corrupt policy. So it has been at one time that these political machines gave an opportunity for majority of people to have some type of political power, some type of wealth, some type of economic future. But nowadays, it's about, it's not about who you know. I mean, what you know is about who you know. It's about how much money you got. And that right there alone would make people angry and be turned off, with that. And we know that at the turn of the century, the 20th century, and especially in the 21st century, we saw a widespread growth of voter apathy. Percentage of Americans eligible to vote who did, in fact, voted was 63% in 1960, and it has fallen ever since then. Okay. So we had 63% in 1960. In 2008, when Barack Obama was was elected, 62% of the electorate came out to vote. This was the highest vote total since 1968, the year that Richard Nixon was elected. So let's talk about voter apathy in the United States. For purpose of this conversation, we will be talking about voter apathy in the United States. According to the Pew Research Center, only 55.7% of the U.S. voting age population cast their ballots in the 2016 presidential election in which Donald Trump was elected. This percentage is a slight increase from the 2012 election, but lower than the 2008 election, which had record numbers. Voter turnout numbers in the United States are quite low compared to other developing nations. The United States was ranked 31 out of the 35 countries in this study, a study that was done by Pew Research Center. The Census Bureau reported that there was roughly 245.5 million Americans who were eligible to vote, but only 157.6 million of those eligible voters were actually registered. The United States Election Project has similar findings, estimating apathy slightly higher. 46.9% of eligible voters did not vote in 2016. Many Americans did not take the effort to learn the voting process, as some see it as a burden. I also want to point out that not only see it as a burden, but they feel that their vote is not going to count. They feel that they are politically illiterate or politically ignorant, I should say. And they feel that no matter who they elect, that they're not going to serve the interests of the people. That's from the local level to the federal level. There is an overemphasis on the number of Americans who have claimed they voted. The clerk of the U.S. House of Representatives only record 136.8 million people compared to the 137.5 million who claim to have voted. The number also includes 170,000 ballots that were blank, spoiled, or null. Voter registration in the United States is an independent responsibility. So citizens are able to choose whether they want to register or not, even though there has, in the last 40, 50 years, it makes it easier for people to register to vote. Like, for example, if you get some type of assistance like food stamps, or if you're going to renew your driver's license, or renew your tag, or you can actually go to the post office to register to vote. So for the past 50 years, it has become increasingly easier for people to register to vote. You know, again, citizens are able to choose whether or not to register. This led to only 64% of the voting age population being registered to vote in 2016. The United States is one of the sole countries that require its citizens to register separately from voting. The lack of automatic registration contributes to the issue that there are over a third of eligible citizens in the United States that are not required to vote. And since 1976, voter turnout has stayed between 8.5% range of fluctuation and has been on a historical downward trend, although there are differences among certain racial, ethnic, or age groups. Turnout has been lingering between 48 and 57% since 2000, or since 1908. Voters between 45 and 65 years of age and voters over 65 years of age have the highest rate of voter turnout. In the time span from 1964 to 2004, 18 to 24-year-olds usually had a voter turnout of 41.8% compared to 25 to 44-year-olds who had a turnout of 57.9%. Voters between 45 and 65 years of age and voters over 65 years old had a turnout rate of 69.3% and 66.6% respectively. Younger age groups are typically underrepresented in proportion. The greatest percentage of unregistered voters is between the ages of 18 and 30. People in younger age demographics are speculative to be more focused on other aspects in their lives, such as college, marriage, and careers. In turn, younger demographics are less likely to learn about politics or understand the implications behind voting. Voters tend to be older, wealthier, and more educated than non-voters. The USA Today poll taken in 2012, 59% of citizens who choose not to vote because they believe that nothing will ever get done in government. We're here in 2022, and that's definitely the same mindset that people have. They believe that nothing's going to get done in government, that I'm not going to be heard, that my vote is not going to count, or no matter who I put in office, again, nothing is going to get done. Another 54% of non-voters believe there is government corruption. 37% was specifically stated that politics does not make any difference in their lives. And among a lot of these percentages, the age range is between 18 and 30. It's because they're focusing on, more things that will affect their life directly, such as college, marriage, and career. Certain voters are likely to refrain from elections due to their lack of interest in the available political stances. Like, for example, you got some people who believe that the two-party system, Democrat and Republican, does not serve the interests of the people. When the wishes of citizens are not properly addressed in government, voters are more likely to become uninterested in the democratic process. One reason for low turnout rates during primaries is due to apathy regarding who will make it to the general election. Many individuals further believe only the general election in the United States is important. Congressional elections are also prone to voter apathy. This leaves candidates choosing out of increasingly polarized voter pool, which heightens rigidness and gridlock in government. There is generally an inverse relationship between level of government and turnout rates. So, for example, if there's like a federal election, people tend to, like, for example, president, Senate, House of Representatives, people tend to go out. You see a higher turnout, for those. You see a higher turnout for a presidential election than you say a midterm election or the election involving a candidate running for a state office, a county office, or municipal office. And that side of the spectrum, you tend to see lower voting turnout rates than it is if you're electing a president and a vice president. So also, they say that the general election is more important, whether it's a presidential election or it's a midterm election. And primary elections tend to have a lower turnout than a general election. Okay, so we have to ask ourselves why. So we have to ask ourselves why voter apathy exists. Why voter apathy? Why voter apathy is a problem? We're going to look at that. Why is voter apathy is a problem? So I stated several reasons why we have voter apathy. So we'll go through those again. Number one, there's corruption in government. Number two, people feel that their votes does not count. Number three, they do not trust their government. Number four, they do not trust the two-party system. Number three, they feel that they have more important things to do than to be involved in the political process. And so, number five, you have people feel that there's too many elections going on in a given period, and it called voter burnout. And finally, people feel that no matter who you put in office, it's not going to make a difference. So here's an article from NPR in 2018 that kind of sheds some light, on this. So let's look at that. Political analysts and political scientists said that voter apathy is a sideline or problem in terms of democracy. So, for example, in 2016, the presidential election tilted to Donald Trump with fewer than 80,000 votes across 3 states, with a dramatic impact on the country. Yet only 4 in 10 eligible voters cast their ballots in 2016. Okay. In 2018, 4 in 10 people did not vote. For example, we have a lady here that she never voted in her life. And her reason is because, according to her, she said people, they tend to be in office for a very long time. They make a career out of it. It does not make a difference. They don't get things done. They don't serve the interests of the people. And this is why she have never voted in a presidential, she have never voted in any election. For every 10 adults that are eligible to vote, only about 4 cast a ballot in the 2010 and 2014 midterm election. So to kind of explain this, we have to go back to the turn of the 20th century to find a midterm where a solid majority of people voted. Every election cycle, there's a lot of attention of who voted and why. But there's another important question. Who is not voting and what impact does that have? The wealthy tend to vote more frequently. Non-voters are most likely to be poor, young, Hispanic, or Asian American. Some research also indicates they're most likely to align with the Democratic Party. So if they are voting, these groups tend to align with the Democratic Party versus the Republican Party, who consists of non-whites and more wealthy and educated people tend to align themselves with the Republican Party. It's debatable whether election results will be different if the entire population votes. But voting determines more than which candidate wins or loses. It ultimately influences which policies elected officials enact and whose interests candidates ignore and acknowledge. And then you have hundreds of non-voters who want to vote but can't. Most of the reasons is because either they feel that they have committed a crime which they cannot vote, or they'll actually have a felony crime on moral multitude in which they cannot vote. 2016, 4% of registered voters who did not vote because of registration problems, according to a Pew Center analysis of Census Bureau data. Many would-be voters face a range of barriers such as voter ID laws, registration difficulties, or criminal records. An estimated 10% of adults in Florida, for example, cannot vote because of a felony conviction. And so that's also varying from state to state as well. Some people who wanted to vote but can't because they have been removed from the voting polls, or their record has been removed from the voter's record. We've seen that quite often in a lot of states. Across the country, the rate at which people are being purged from the voting rolls, a process historically intended to keep records updated, has increased substantially compared to a decade ago, according to a report from the Bremen Center published, that was recently published, December of 2018 to be exact. This analysis found 4 million more people were purged between 2014 and 2016 than the equivalent period between 2006 and 2008. Legal obstacles are an important part of the non-voter story, but there are many millions of Americans who can vote and choose not to. Their reasons are bad. Some are apathetic or too busy. Others don't like their choices. They don't think their vote matters. They think the system is corrupt, or they don't think they know enough to vote. And so in this article here, NPR, they went to 4 states to talk about why people are not voting. And that's based on age, income, educational levels, and habits. So look at this one from Las Vegas. Okay, so here we have a Marine Corps veteran who says that she didn't learn anything about voting. She is a 23-year-old veteran who has never voted before. And again, those individuals who are registered voter are between 18 and 30. They are more focused on other things such as college, marriage, careers, things of that nature. So they're basically saying, when I'm too busy, to vote, or I don't have enough education or knowledge to understand the political process. And no one has taken the time out to teach me either. So, politically, I'm ignorant. And so that's why this person decided not to vote. So let's go to West Virginia. For example, in McDowell County, West Virginia, has the lowest voter turnout in the state of West Virginia in 2016. The median income in that county is roughly $25,000 a year. 61% of registered voters in McDowell County are non-voters. People who have voted 0 or 1 time in the last 8 elections, according to a review of data from L2, a nonpartisan voter file vendor. So let's find out what's their situation, why they're not voting. So according to one person, this individual says that she believes that the people that are elected in McDowell County does not serve or help their county. She said there are no jobs here. There's deserted streets. We have a rundown downtown, she says. There's nothing here. So when the kids graduate from college, they basically leave and go somewhere else. It's not much economic activity rather. Most of the stores are closed. The closest Walmart has shut down. They're basically in a food desert. They're dealing with food insecurity. And politicians often ignored her count, the county, this person. Another Dow County resident believes that his vote does not matter. He also says that he sees no point in voting because the system overrules what people want. And there's also, in reference to the 2016 election, many people don't like the electoral college system because it basically, they're basically the ones that elect the president, not the people. So he gave an example of how Hillary Clinton won the popular vote, but Trump became president because he had more electoral college votes. A lot of people were upset about that. Okay, so let's go to El Paso. So we have Christina Rodriguez, a 30-year-old single working mom. This is why she said that she does not vote. Just give me a sec. So already as we looking at this, we discovered a whole slew of reasons why people are not voting. And it's kind of a great example of what we're going through today. People are saying, I'm too busy, my vote does not count. I don't trust the political process. I don't trust the voting process. I'm not in tune with the candidates that are running. The two-party system is corrupt. There's too much power in politics for only a certain amount of individuals. Many people felt that their districts, whether it's federal, county, or local, are being ignored. So it's a whole lot of reasons. It's a whole lot of reasons why people are not voting. And it's going to be really difficult to kind of deal with that. Hopefully we can discuss some ways in which we can address voter apathy. But again, those are some of the main reasons why we have voter apathy. Like I said, it's a whole lot of reasons. People feel that their vote is not going to count. They feel that that no matter who is elected, that their voices are not going to be heard. That their localities are going to be ignored. That the people that we elected are not catering to their interests and often be ignored. So you have a whole lot of reasons why this right here, of course, contributes to voter apathy. A lot of reasons why people don't vote. They say that it's a lack of integrity, a lack of accountability, a lack of transparency. We see that from all levels of government. We see that from whether it's a major political party, Democratic or Republican, Libertarian, whatever, Green Party, whatever primary or secondary political party that you belong to or you're affiliated with, we get those same type of reasons across the board. In 2016, in fact, Texas has been home to one of the worst voter turnout rates in the country. In 2016, 51% of registered voters, voters in Texas actually vote. More than half of eligible Latinos nationally don't vote. In the last presidential election, Latinos represented 12% of eligible voters nationwide, but only 9% of the overall electorate actually voted on election day. Many analysts predicted that Donald Trump's offensive rhetoric about Latinos would mobilize record numbers of Latinos to vote in 2016, but voter turnout remained relatively even in 2012. A lot of them say that, even that, really doesn't matter. Another point, Romero was, mentioning, by the way, person is talking here is, see if I can find. Another person in this article stated 2 reasons why you have low voter turnout. So let's see what that is. Okay, so this is this person's 2 reasons why so many Latinos are non-voters. Number one, the disconnect they feel when the political process, and 2, political candidates really does not, invest in outreach to the Latino population. They feel that candidates are out of touch with the Latino population. And so this article kind of gives an example of, so that article right there gives a real good example of why people are not voting. Let's see if we can find, some other reasons why voter apathy exists. And some people say that the system is broken. Most of the young people say they're between the ages of 18 and 24 say that the system is broken. In fact, voter turnout among 18 to 24-year-olds was only about 1 out of every 4 young citizens in the last presidential election. Not only are young people not voting, they are not getting involved in politics either. They don't volunteer for campaigns, and very few run for elected office. Voter turnout across all ages has been declining. The United States now has, on average, the lowest voter turnout in the world. Voter apathy is creeping up slow. Some call it a political depression, and it begs the question, if people don't participate, at what point does a democracy cease to be a democracy? Some of the reasons young people stay away from the polls match those of older non-voters, but some are unique to young people. For example, the sense that one's vote matters has declined. People follow the news less and thus are out of touch with politics and public affairs. So as you can see, you see a lot of people, they're not watching the news as much as they do. Gains suggest that there's a decline in the quality of education in urban America, particularly a decrease in civil activities by young people. But perhaps most of all, there's a sense that politics is a dirty business. Some people assume moral and ethical individuals won't run because they can't stomach the compromises needed to raise the money and dodge the investigative reporters. There's also a perception that unless you are a wealthy white male from a politically connected family, you might as well forget. Yeah, that's definitely a big reason. That's definitely a big reason to, not want to run or not want to be involved. So unless you are a white, wealthy male, a lot of people say there's no sense to, get involved in politics or run for office or volunteer or any of those things. As a matter of fact, this is the same group that said, I don't want to have anything to do with this period. So I'm just not going to go to the voting booth, period. So these are some real big concerns. It's a real big problem. The real big concerns is a real big problem, in relationship to voter apathy. So what are some of the issues? What are some of the issues that affect voter turnout? Let's look at some of those. So give me a minute while this loads up. Here, we're going to find out what are some of the issues that affect voter turnout. But before we get to that, what is voter fatigue? In political science, voter fatigue is a cause of voter apathy, which results from the electorates or representative democracies being required to vote too often. Voter fatigue and voter apathy should be distinguished from what arises when voters are not allowed or unable to vote, or when disenfranchisement occurs, or voters are engaged generally but repelled by the options available to them. In other words, there's a lot of basically, a lot of people are turned off of the fact that, you have a lot of elections in a given short period of time. So what are some of the causes? Number one, voters are not interested in the issue. Number two, voters are bothered by the inconvenience of physically voting. So in a lot of states, you don't have it to where you have early voting, curbside voting. Uh, it makes it harder to for absentee voting or vote by mail. In other words, it's inconvenient, to vote, and voters want options. Number three, voters feel their vote would not count or the election has already been won by one side. Voters feel that it's not worth their while to educate themselves as to the issues, and hence their vote would not be worth making. This is related to the concept of rational ignorance. Voters have to vote for too many institutions or too many different types of offices, sometimes too often. The issues does not affect the voters directly. Issues does not affect voters with a perceived relative period. And voters have greater priority, than issues such as financial security. They're too busy, with other things. One of the financial security is often the number one thing that's on people's minds. And so, with that, they're focusing on more being financially secure, than to be involved in the political process, period. So what are some of the methods that can be used to combat voter fatigue? Okay, number one, make it mandatory to vote. Two, use sortition to choose those eligible to vote. So in other words, have a criteria that makes it easier for people to be eligible, to vote. Another thing is that kind of spread the elections out. Spread the elections out. That's another way. Another way to combat voter fatigue is to provide voters with multiple options, to vote, like curbside voting, absentee voting, voting by mail, vote electronically. Make it easier for those who've been convicted of crime, make it more easier for them to have their rights restored. Also, you have legislation that are fixed terms for elections to ensure that elections would not be held too often. So, for example, the United Kingdom, Parliament or the Congress or the legislative body of the United Kingdom are elected every 5 years. And the senators are elected every 6 years. But members of the House of Representatives are only elected every 2 years. So every 2 years, all 435 members of the House of Representatives is being elected, again. So, in my opinion, their term needs to be increased from 2 years to at least 4 years. That way you won't have so many people. You won't have so many people on the ballot. Let's close that one out. Trying to pull up this document, to kind of give an idea of, oh, so I like this. This is an infographic. I like this. So we know that voter turnout and voter apathy are interchangeable. So we're going to briefly talk about voter turnout. What is it? Voter turnout is a helpful statistic that indicates how engaged voters are in a particular election. Generally, this is understood as the percentage of voters who voted in a given election and is calculated by dividing the number of votes by the number of voters. However, calculating voter turnout is complex and can vary based on how an eligible voter is defined and how they are voted. Additionally, many factors impact voter turnout, including new election laws, the type of election, and the competitiveness of the race. All right, so let's look at the number of voters. The number of age voters, those are 18 years of age of older. Voting age population is the number of voting age individuals in a jurisdiction that are 18 years of age or older. For example, according to the 2020 US Census, Connecticut has a voting age population of 2,869,227 people. Okay. Now we're talking about the voting eligible population. This is the number of voters in a jurisdiction that are eligible to vote. This does not include individuals who are of mental capacity, incarcerated, or immigration status. The VEP of Connecticut, for example, is not officially calculated, but the 2020 general election, the United States Election Project estimates that Connecticut's VPE was 603,327. So they're using Connecticut as an example. Registered voters. The number of registered voters in its jurisdiction, according to the Secretary of State for Connecticut. The number of registered voters as of October 27, 2020 was 2,505,076. And of that number, 2,309,576 have actually voted. That's pretty good. You know, we're talking about the state of Connecticut. That's pretty good, but you don't get, that. You really, you get that in the state of Alabama. Historically, the average people who the voter turnout rate in the state of Alabama has always been around 25%. The number of votes. There are three different pools that may be used to determine the number of votes. Again, each pool is a subset of the previous. For example, you have the total ballots cast. This is the total number of ballots cast in a jurisdiction for all contests in that election. Then you have the highest office turnout. This is the number of ballots cast for the contest that attained the most votes. And then you have ballots cast for target contest. This is the number of ballots cast for a specific contest. In an election where multiple contests are on the same ballot, turnout rates would vary as not all voters cast a vote for every contest. So what are some of the factors that affect voter turnout? Number one, electoral competence. In a jurisdiction or major contest where political parties are more competitive, voters are more likely to vote. For example, a presidential candidate. If you're running for president, that contest, voters will more likely vote for a president and vice president versus maybe a governor, lieutenant governor, or county commissioner, or mayor or city council. And in certain states, Senate and House and congressional races, tend to be popular as well. And some gubernatorial races have also been popular. Like, for example, in Georgia, when Stacey Adams ran against Kemp in that election. In Florida, you had a popular gubernatorial race in Florida. And this year, you have Gregory Abbott running against Peter O'Rourke for Texas governor this year. That is a highly popular gubernatorial race this year. And so you're going to have more people, going out to the polls for those particular races. The second thing that affects voter turnout would be candidate influence. Certain candidates, especially presidential or gubernatorial candidates, can particularly rally voters or discourage turnout. Again, in Texas, in Georgia, in Arizona, where the incumbent governors of those states are, while they are unpopular in nature, they are rallying their base to come out and vote. But on the other side, their incumbent, their challengers are also highly influenced, and that's going to draw people out to vote in those particular states. So even though this is about the state of Connecticut, I'm just only giving you, the basic facts about voter turnout. So another factor that affects voter turnout would be what type of election you have. Primary elections, off-year or non-presidential and non-midterm elections, and local elections generally draw fewer voters than federal or statewide elections. 4, changes in voting laws. When jurisdictions modify their voting laws, such as ranked choice voting, voter identification, early voting, turnout rates are impacted. Also, if you have laws that undermine political power, especially of African Americans and people of color, or if you are disenfranchising a certain group of individuals, that's also going to affect voter turnout. And of course, voter turnout is going to be lower when you're disenfranchising a certain group of people. Then finally, we got demographics, and then we have issues. Generally, certain demographics are more likely to vote. For example, women are more likely to vote than men, or older Americans are more likely to vote than younger Americans. Turnout may increase if the election impacts policy issues relevant to these or other demographics. Like, for example, we found that in 1992, when the presidential race between Bill Clinton and George Bush, you see a record number of younger people, that came out to vote because you had a political candidate that in Bill Clinton that resonates with the younger population. Same thing when Obama ran in 2008 and 2012. You had a large amount of younger people, that came out and vote. And surprisingly, in 2020, when was the race between Joe Biden and Donald Trump, we saw an increase in younger Americans going out to vote because they felt that, this particular race, and the issues that are being discussed affect them directly. For example, student loan forgiveness. How many of us got student loans? Making college more affordable. making housing more affordable. Those are issues that affect younger people. And so with that, they came out to the polls in record numbers. And that's why we're seeing close to 160 million Americans that came out to vote, because there was issues that are relevant to the demographics. And so these are some of the things that affect. So these are some of the things. So these are some of the factors that affect voter turnout. So and finally, so we talked about what is voter apathy, what is voter fatigue, what are some of the problems that are associated with voter apathy, why does voter apathy exist? And so in conclusion, we'll be talking about what can we do to address voter apathy? So again, real quick, we're gonna go through some of the issues. One of the things to suggest is that voter education may be the best solution for apathy, because it helps people understand that while countrywide problems need to be dealt with, participation in local elections is one way of taking action to fix the situation in their own neighborhood. I definitely agree with that. While people are focusing more on the glamour and excitement of a national election, the real change happens in the local election, whether it's municipal or county. That is where that is where the real power lies. Okay, that's one. So that's kind of the main thing. People need to understand the political process. People need to understand what the political process is. People need to know, who the candidates are, why they are running, the whole nine yards. Finally, we're going to be talking about what are some of the solutions to voter apathy. What are some of the solutions? There's no quick fix to this. So there's definitely no quick fix to voter apathy, because it's rooted very deep. So again, before we get into the solution, real quick, we will talk about we will remind people of what causes voter apathy. So there are two primary causes of voter apathy. You got alienation and voter fatigue. Alienation is defined as, according to Webster, this refers to the sense that voters feel like the political system does not work for them, and any attempt to influence it would be a fruitless exercise. This could be due to many factors. One of the reasons is a lack of education. According to a study done by Commissioner Ginsburg, the director of Circle, found that nearly 20% of youth did not feel that they knew enough to vote. Additionally, the study found that many youth have glaring misconceptions about the voting process, with many in the study thinking that they could not vote due to relatively minor violations like driving under the influence. This 20% is especially significant, and so this is just about that 20% is the same 20% that turned out for the 2018 midterm election. The second one is voter fatigue. Voter fatigue is defined in political science as the apathy that the electorate can experience under certain circumstances, one of which could be that they are required to vote too often. One of the probable causes for voter fatigue is the bombardment of political messages through the internet, especially social media. With a large amount of exposure to political messages year-round can cause a fatigue that potential voters away from the voting process. So you probably know now that on social media, that has become a major platform for political candidates. So up and down your timeline, even to this day, you're going to see a lot of political ads or a lot of political content, and that tends to drive people away because they're being bombarded with political messages pretty much every single day, that they really don't know who the candidates are, what the issues are, and who they feel would best represent them. So they're turned off by that. Now, along with those two main factors, voter apathy can be caused by either uncomfortable with the possible choices, being unable to vote due to legal or logistical barriers, being overwhelmed by personal issues, or encounter registration problems. So what are some of the solutions? One of the possible solutions to voter apathy is the younger generation is to increase education. Multiple studies have shown that decreased civil instruction started in the 60s have led to a decrease in young voter turnout. In 2014, there was a record low turnout in adults 18 to 29, with 20% casting a ballot. In 2018, only 9 states required at least 1 year of government or civic education. According to a 2018 survey by the Woodrow Wilson National Fellowship Foundation, only 1/3 of Americans could pass a general citizenship test. 13% of young Americans knew when the Constitution was ratified, and less than 50% could identify which countries the United States fought in World War II. According to the Church study, this has led to 20% of young people to avoid voting due to not knowing enough information to cast a ballot. So the main thing is that we have to educate people. We have to educate people on the political process. We have to educate people on the voting process. And we definitely need to educate people on the candidates. I think there needs to be a lot of forums and a lot of debates and things of that nature so that people can really understand who these individuals are. And there's a lot of literature out there. So a lot of directories out there that, list the candidates. Some organizations have do like voting election guides. People need to grab those as often as they can so that they can study these candidates. And if they need to have contact information for them so that they can call, email, with any questions or concerns. I believe that by doing that, people will be able to better understand the political process, the voting process, and they will learn more about the candidate. So education, outreach, a third way is to make it easier for people to vote. Some suggest that an election day should be a holiday, which is a good idea. So education needs to be involved, make it easier and accessible to vote, make election day a national holiday, and do more outreach. Those are some of the things, possible solutions to compact voter apathy. And so I hope that this presentation has been informative to you. And again, this will be posted on all major podcast platforms. As we go through another election season, we kind of want this issue needs to be addressed. And I hope that to the best of my ability that I have done so. And of course, once we post it, we do welcome your questions and your comments as well. And I will do my best to address every concern and answer every question. So I want to thank you for taking the time out to be with us today. Tune in for another episode of Talk Show Presents. From now, I'm Keith Williams, your host. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.